Opposing Gloves here, and today I'm going to show you how to make a snare with Harmor. This is a substantially more advanced sound design with tutorial, and it requires quite a bit more knowledge than just knowing how Harmor works. So sound and synth basics, I'll take you through it and hopefully you'll follow it, but I have created a track to do this. I gave it a brief mix down, a super brief one. I didn't really bother dealing with levels or aiming for a spot or mastering or anything in it. Everything's pretty much still in the stages of working, but this was just for a demo, so I don't really plan on going much farther with this. But here's the demo, and the snare is completely synthesized. So it's a one lead bass type line here, so it's just one bass. And I've created it in Harmor. The ARP is just a simple little square wave, sort of square saw thing with some reverb and very like chiptune like. It's got that very short notes. I'm just gonna really quick take you through that. So, and then the bass down here is just one line bass. It's in legato mode. It's got all sorts of distortion, sort of like that nasally big room bass that I made in the in one of these series. In this series somewhere a while ago. And so yeah, if you're interested in the bass, then go check out some of the bass tutorials to get a general idea of how to sort of go about doing something like this. But I also went outside of Harmor and did wave shaping, limiting, and then I'm also side chaining the kick and the snare to this, as well as adding a high pass filter moving around. And there's a number of resonance, and the filters are moving on both part A and B. This is a two-part Harmor. So anyways, let's go to the snare. So if we solo the snare, which are these things. So here is the snare. Whoops, that's not the snare. This is the snare. So there are three parts to this snare. Let's go to the pattern. So you'll notice that it's a little involved, a lot of involved. So the most important part, the one thing you need to start out with, is the noise. So if we open it up, this envelope doesn't look like it's doing anything. It's because I'm using all the relative controls. You'll see my attack is all the way up to 0, and my decay is relatively up. My sustain is at 0, and my release is out just a little bit. The sustain's at 0. That way it doesn't ring out if I hold the note down. So let me go up to C5. I forgot exactly what note I settled on for the noise. I believe it was C5. So I just found a sample of white noise. Some people might find this cheating, but it's technically synthesis, and it's a Harmor's capability. It can resynthesize this. So one of the neat things is this is technically synthesis. It's not audio. So it's really interesting, but the EQ gives you extraordinary powers, like insane powers that regular EQs would not give you when it comes to working with it, because now you're dealing with changing the levels of harmonics instead of changing the levels of the relative audio. It's a different thing. It's a non-linear, it's a linear phase. So, and the cut it gives you is pretty much perfect. So you just have, it's like the EQ of your dreams. Man, I've never thought about that. Maybe I'll just open up Harmor just to use it as an EQ in the future. Volume. I did think about that, but okay. So we talked about volume. So this is the noise with the noise by itself. That's what it sounds like. I am going to turn off I do leave Harmor because it is that involved. Like, if you really want it, it's been a while on this. So, okay, so there's the snare by the white noise. So the white noise, one of the more important things is getting that contour right, getting the volume envelope right. But then, if you look at a snare and the way it hits, you'll see that it's got a more full spectrum, some stuff on the bottom end down here, and then it will turn on. So I have a low pass filter, or not this is taking off the high end. This little thing up here, that's the filter. And so, not the low end, I mean the high end. And I turn it on relatively quickly, but it's pretty slow considering that the first part gets through, giving me a very more transient sound. I have a phaser running through here at a very low width, and it's not very much, just to give a sense, because the harmonics, so really quick back up to string harmonics versus membrane harmonics. So string harmonics, you put your finger on a string and you cut it in half, and the wavelength, therefore, is half of what it originally was, and it's harmonically related to the string. Like that's it. On a membrane though, something like a flat surface like a snare drum, it's way different. It creates all these weird modes that are not related to the fundamental when you hit it. And then there's a number of other things that we haven't even like considered yet, like what happens on the bottom head and the top head, how the drum cavity resonates. Like, it's just like, it's super crazy, like what goes on here. So we choose to use noise as a result. But as a result, we can take away a couple of things from this. There's a fundamental, there's still a fundamental, sort of, and there is a shifted series of that fundamental series. So and then there's a lot of noise because it's technically not noise because it's related somehow, not harmonically. It's just this big mess. So anyways, I'm using this to sort of simulate that beginning attack. And then if we come over here to filter 2, I originally had it going. Filter 2 was this custom filter shape thing that was sort of weird to try and create the profile of a snare noise. But depending on your drum, I just killed this huge spider in my room, and now I'm like paranoid that there's more spiders in here. Now I'm trying to create the profile of this going on here. So snares, if you look at snares, they'll have these different noise shapes, so you can manipulate this relationship. Like if I were to turn this on, turn filter 2's on, you see I turn it on at the end to try and get that, but if I were to, I don't necessarily want it that colored. Something that's so there are those two things, but you can manipulate this relationship to get all kinds of noise textures. Right now we're just dealing with noise. If we come down here to the pitch, I'm not going to touch this because it took me forever to get this the way I wanted it. Like, it's super, super touchy. But this pitch envelope, what it does is pitching down my noise. You can see it's going down. This is a huge impact on your sound. Just so you know, this is the shape I settled on. I ended up moving it around. This is one of those things that you just sit here and you twiddle with until you got it. And once you got it, you just don't touch it. Like, do not even move it. Like, I'll freeze it. That's how like paranoid I am. You could get a huge amount of textures out of here too, though, like an enormous amount. So it's a very versatile sound in that regard. Like it's insane. So if we come over here to the EQ, so this is the shape I settled on. Oh, it freezes all my envelopes. I didn't know that. See how often I use that. So the shape I settled on was this one. I boosted it at 200. I looked up here and it tells me what I'm working with. So 200 was what I was going for, somewhere around in that range. And it's got this really unusual shape. This is just, I was going for I didn't have a snare I was really basing it on. I listened to a lot of Black Octopus snares from that sample pack, which are those sort of punchy electro, big room, dubstep type snares. So this is what I settled on. And that's what I went for. And that's what I ended up doing at the end. And you'll notice I have very unusual sort of shapes to try and get out tones, because I was having problems. You'll probably have this as you move along here. When you're playing it, if you turn your reverb on, you get that metallic sound, which is, a good thing. Snares are generally metal unless you're using a wood snare. But I didn't like that. So it was coming from this reverb, and I came into the EQ because I didn't realize it and was trying to fix it. And yeah, so it just became a mess. So I ended up disabling the reverb on this one and using an external reverb, because you got to remember that when you're physical modeling like this is pretty intense physical modeling, you're going to want to, create a room. You're going to need to create a room at some point to give it a sense of space, because they didn't record this snare in like some unusual spot, like I don't know, some spot without any space. I don't know. Anyways, you're gonna need to create a room. So I was trying to do that here, and it introduced the delay. Ended up producing a harmonic series that I did not enjoy, so I turned it off. So that's the noise. Okay, so there's the noise. And these things, they're post-processing. There's nothing going on in any of them. I just routed them to 8. I kept them separate in case I wanted to do something, but I send it to 8, and there's a bit of EQ and compression, and then there's a little reverb if I wanted to do reverb, which I ended up turning off anyways. So, okay, so this one is the fundamental. So there are two, like I said, there are 2 modes, I believe I said this, that are generally created, 2 series. There's a first harmonic series, and then there's a second harmonic series. This is the first one. This is my fundamental. Now, so this is what it sounds like. It's glorious. So, okay. What's going on here? Well, this is another thing that's greatly changed by various things. So the Harmonic Series will get softer as we go up. So these notes are, this one's louder, this one's softer. This is just set by ear, but the volume of these different notes matters, and you use multiple notes because I wanted to create a series. Now, did I use the harmonizer? I didn't use the harmonizer on this one. This is my shifted series, and it's got quite a few more harmonics in it. But the fundamental, so I have my fundamental on the timbre shape, and then it comes down, and this is the shape I settled on. These are the harmonics that I am using, and then the rest of it is silent, or it should be, yeah, it's all silent. So just these first couple of harmonics, and I wind up with this sort of unusual looking saw wave, almost a triangle wave type deal. Okay, so on the effects side of things, there's very little going on here. There's some reverb to give it a sense of space, and I'm compressing the low end and a bit of the high end. I can't remember if I moved in the mid band. I don't believe I did. But these are very, very, very slight adjustments. Again, set by ear. Almost everything's pretty much set by ear at this point. Again, this envelope looks deceptively like it's doing nothing, but I promise you it's doing something. You look at the attacks all the way up, the decays at a particular point. So I'm not going to touch this envelope because I got it the way I want it. So, yeah. Filter frequency. And now, let's really quick talk about why would you want to synthesize a snare? Well, your ability to synthesize a snare, I should have said this at the beginning, will enable you to take a snare sound and manipulate a part of it. So you can take it and make it the snare sound that you want. You could take an acoustic snare and move it around and make it the exact way that you want it. And if you know how to synthesize a freaking snare to one that you want, then you can certainly take one and modify it. So you can, like, most of the work's already done for you. You just got to maybe get one part right. So that's why this is like super useful. And the same goes for bass drums and any other sort of percussive sound, is the ability to manipulate it or, enhance it in some way by adding in synthesizing elements is a great tool to you. Okay, so the filter frequency, I also have a low pass coming on here. And the big thing is this ridiculously fast pitch envelope. This is what I settled on. This is what I went for. It's that. Now, the notes I'm playing are these notes here, G, F, and A, but I can move them around and get very different tones. So those are great weapons at your disposal. So that's the fundamental. And here's this shifters series. Shifter, it should have said shifted. So I cloned the fundamental. I just cloned that one, and I added in a bunch of notes. I changed them up, and I got a little more crazy with the volume. So these ones are louder than these ones. And this is another thing I set by ear that also can greatly change the timbre of your drum. I kept the same harmonic series, but I boosted this a little bit more, I believe, on this one. And did I boost it more? I don't believe I did. Did I? I just said I believed I did. Yeah, I did. So this one's a different shape. The little moves matter in this. Like, it's those little things that just get you. You'll end up making a sound you really don't like. So, and then just from the littlest move. So, okay, compression's on. High and mids are up. I have reverb on this one as well. That's the sound we have. And the harmonizer is on. So I'm cloning the series. I sort of just randomized this. I wanted it to be some weird harmonic series. And this is mostly for the transient attack at the beginning of the snare. So if you come over to the frequency, got the frequency filter going on. It's the same thing and the same pitch envelope, but I have a very different setup with a much sharper, a very different pitch envelope. So I believe that's all I touched with those two things. And I know this is one of those things that you could spend a really long time messing with. I guess it's the same pitch envelope. I just changed the series. So I just made it higher. Did I change the pitch? The pitch is important on these too. So over here, the pitch is 2.02, and that's on the shifted series. So I pitched it up an octave, and the fundamental is at 1. So that's another thing. It's just up an octave. So the pitch will naturally go down. It will sound like it's going down faster. So, okay, now let's play it all together. That's what you get. And I routed them out to this channel 8. I EQ'd it. Oh, you know what? That's something that I skipped. There's just so much on this patch. I'm sorry jumping around like this. But so on the fundamental, I wound up settling on this particular EQ shape, and it's just what I chose. I was going again for the 200. I wanted this to be the emphasis. If you look at anything, there's going to be the slower stuff. There's going to be some stuff happening in the middle, which is going to be your original mode with the shifted mode. And then you'll have a lot of noise in the upper end. But it all sort of, there's parts where it just merges together. So EQ shapes are enormously important. Like, they just make, oh, see, there you go. It even behaves kind of like a snare in a way. So, well, that's what I was going for, so better. So this is the shape. I was, again, going for that profile on the fundamental. So this is the fundamental series. And then on the shifted series, I went with the same profile. So nothing shocker there. Okay, so we come in here. I added some EQ, moved things around, sort of made it the way I want it. At this point, I'm working with the sound as if it were an audio sample. So it's a little more comfortable with what I was doing, and because I work with snare sounds more. So, but it was unusual because I could go in and, you know, change the fundamental to the exact way I wanted it. It's really weird. But as you can see, let's turn it on. It pretty much looks like a snare. We have our little snap. If you listen to any snares, let's go over here to the snare samples in Black Octopus. Snare, 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 snare. You can totally hear. You can hear the sine tone. Once you've made it, it's like impossible to not hear it. You can hear the snare in there. You can hear the sine tone. It's like right there. And you can hear the noise. It's like, oh, it sounds so separated once you've made one, because that's like how it is. Mine's not quite as punchy. I could do things to the fundamental and make them pop out more, and I'd have to change the pitch envelope and things, and I'd finagle with it more. Some I'm not patient enough to do when I already have crap that I can mess with, and then I could just modify that crap. But I could come in here and make my ideal snare sound, and then I can make a whole sample pack probably off this one snare sound just by moving like the EQ just a little bit, because it makes a huge difference. Like that stuff is just moving the envelope just a little bit. And now another thing is people will often mix it with an acoustic snare sound, which is like a million times easier in some regards because you've already got something to work with and you're just enhancing it. So that's also pretty easy to work with. So anyways, this is the EQ shape I settled on. I am compressing it. The compression, I didn't touch anything as far as knobs go. I came in here, the master, I actually brought it down just a touch. The compression makes a big difference, as you can see. You can hear the room really being brought out on that now too, which adds to its realism. However, you might not like that. Maybe you want a completely dry sound, so you like literally completely dry, like no room at all because it's synthesized. Then you could come in here and add your own reverb later, and you can do that. So you see we're getting dangerously close to these. So this is, wow, like woohoo. So, okay, so I boosted the highs just a touch. I boosted the mids. So this is an expander essentially. And so without these on, I lose a lot of my body. And so with them on, they add quite a bit. And so together they are Captain Planet. So, okay, so that's that. That's the snare sound. And with the rest of the drums on, now some people would not like that room. So it would be interesting is if we came in here and turned the reverbs off. The noise doesn't have any reverb. Sounds way super different, like as you could see. And come in here and add our own. Another thing that would be sort of helpful for something like this. So here's a few more tips and tricks just about snare sounds in general. You might consider recording it. I would record 3 different kinds of these snares. I would record one with reverb on the fundamental, because I would use this as an audio file at some point. It'd just be easier to work with to a degree. I would record this with reverb on the fundamental and no reverb on the compressed. I would record the compressed version. I would record that. Then I would turn them off and record that other one I just had with the reverb. I'd shorten up the reverb And then I would record it completely dry. So first, let me show you something interesting. Let's turn this off and this off. So I'm going to use the external reverb and just record that one. I'm going to put my Edison right here. Edison. It should be in the miscellaneous. There it is. Okay. Play. I'm going to put out a pattern right here. I'm going to mute the snare. Or I'm going to solo the snare. Now on the reverb. I'm going to record it kind of like that. Okay. So I'm going to play. Whoops. Play. Cool. That's all I wanted. Come in here. Drag it out. So now it's an audio file. And it's our amazing snare sound. I'm going to just chop it up right here. This is what our amazing snare sound sounds like. Don't judge my spelling. Okay, so sometimes I'm lazy. That's what we got, right? And we could turn the out up. And we can really control the reverb tail. Mess with the pitch. And really get it to sound quite a bit punchier. So there's steps after this. Doing this is not the end. This is like one of the most complicated things to do. So if you really want to do this, like it's totally possible. Like as you've seen, I've done it. And you can go and create your amazing sample pack. But there's just so many options. So those are some options for you in case you're interested in making a crazy snare. And so just to show that it's viable again, I'll play the track one more time. Turn it all solo. There we go. I really like this track. Like I'm considering continuing it. So, continue to mess with it. The snare, I would not be done with the snare at this point. I would mess with the noise still and just try and get sort of a sharper sounding snare. But I have a couple ideas of how I would go about doing that after that with the audio file to make it the exact way that I want it. And I'd probably EQ it again and maybe even compress it one more time using different compression settings. I might actually go after the transient with compression on this because I'm being weird and would attempt to bring this down right here with a very specific compressor setting, or maybe some sort of a transient mastering deal. I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of interesting choices that we have available to ourselves. So I hope this was helpful. If you followed that, great. Like this is something that was very difficult for me to learn. It's one of the sort of the steps in sound design that when you can do this, you feel pretty accomplished because you're like, man, I freaking made a snare sound. Like that's pretty cool. Even if it doesn't sound, I think it sounds pretty close to an acoustic. Well, at least I have, this doesn't, but I have ways that I could think of to manipulate it to sound more acoustic. I came across several of those ways earlier, but that wasn't what I was going for. I was going for this sort of idealized snare sound. And some of them are closer to a kick sometimes than a snare. They just add noise to them. But it's pretty cool. Like, if you could do this, you're on your way to get into some pretty advanced sound design and having some interesting ideas. A lot of it, though, is based on your knowledge of harmonics and how those relate. And then your sound design is just your ability to manipulate that and do things that you want to do. So if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. And it's another free VST. It's called Valhalla Frequency Echo. These people make great other plugins. I think it might be one guy. I'm not totally sure. But you go over to Valhalla DSP. This is, it actually says it's his first one. So this is his first one. It is a delay plugin. And I would use it for a very specific reason.